pivoting back to the kids, folks.
Yeah.
I do want to pop off.
Yes.
Did you either of you guys watch the documentary on Netflix, Abducted in Plain Sight?
Everyone's talking about it. I haven't
No,
seen
I
it
haven't
yet.
seen
Look,
it.
spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But also, I'm just going to tell you guys right now, not really spoilers, because this is not a good true crime documentary.
Right.
No?
This is not what you want out of it. Usually true crime documentaries go in like one of two ways.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like they let it unfold and then it gets solved in the end, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh wow, crazy story. Or it's like this happened and it's still unsolved. Who maybe did this?
Yeah.
You know, this is not that. This is not that.
Right,
Let me
right.
tell you my experience of watching this. I have insomnia. That's an important preface.
Yes.
I fall asleep. My girlfriend falls asleep at 10 p.m. I'm usually getting to bed like 3 a.m. minimum. Like I'm up. So, and it involves quietly watching things in bed often when I'm like, trying to sleep.
Yeah.
So I'm watching this shit, and it's like, this is a night I kept waking her up because there were so many parts in this where I was like shooting out of bed uncontrollably, like pacing around the room.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
That's
Like,
what everyone says.
so, dude, all right. So this is the plot of this movie, right?
Yes.
So it's this family of four or five, whatever.
Yeah.
They're Mormons. It's in the 70s, and they befriend this family down the street with like kind of similar. They start spending tons of time together.
Yeah.
You find out more and more later in the doc that like the dad from the other family is like super interested in their daughter who's like 12 or something.
Yeah,
right?
that's
Yeah.
not good.
Like and they start letting things slip. You're already realizing the family's dumb people.
Yeah.
They're like letting you know, like, we did let him spend the night in her bed. Like, you're just like,
Whoa,
what
wait
the
a minute.
fuck? Like, so that's not
Wow.
even the bad stuff. So they're like
Whoa.
enabling all of this. He eventually kidnaps her. They're like, he wants to take her on vacation or something.
Oh,
so he
no.
like literally kidnaps her, and she's gone for a long time.
Yeah.
The dude gets back. This is the most wild part. The dad's talking about
Oh.
hanging out.
Yes.
Yeah, pause. Yeah.
Fuck.
The dad's talking about hanging out with the molester dad. And he already knows this guy's bad news.
Yeah.
They're hanging out, and the guy is like, they go park in this like park district area.
Yeah.
And the guy's like complaining that he has like a hard on, and he's like, I need to be relieved. It's really bad. Like, and he asks his like friend, like, will you jerk me off?
Yeah.
And the dad is like, I didn't know what to do, so I did it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like jerks him off in this park.
yeah.
So fucking.
The guy
of
who's
this,
like molesting his
abducted-
kid.
Yeah.
And then
So
like it's
fucking hot.
literally the wildest part because like
Such
they're
a hot moment.
they're setting it up
is,
like
you know?
because this guy's already doing perverted stuff, right?
Right.
So like
Yeah.
when he drives him to the park and like shows him his boner, I thought that was gonna be the turning point of where he'd be like, that's when I realized this guy, something might be up with him.
No.
Yeah.
But no, it's like, what else could I have done? You know?
Right.
So then that's how I jumped up and screamed, right? Because like you're just like wanting
Yeah.
these parents to do something about this predator,
Yeah.
and then
But also wanting them to
so he
fuck.
kidnaps the
odd.
daughter and everything, and then after that, the wife starts having sex with him.
Yeah, because he's the man.
Yeah.
Like literally, the whole
Wow.
family's hooking up with this dude,
Yeah.
and he keeps kidnapping her daughter. Then he wants her to. He like
Wait a minute. What do you mean he keeps kidnapping the
no,
dogs?
yes. So he kidnaps her.
Hold on.
No,
hold on.
so he kidnaps her.
Yeah.
They finally get arrested in Mexico and caught. And then the guy, the predator,
Yeah.
uses that park hand job, I think. I'm kind of might be remembering this wrong, but he kind of like blackmails the family. He's like, "Hey, you remember that hand job you gave me? Like, just drop the charge. Like, don't press charges against me. Say that I was on vacation with her." And they did. They like went along with it. And then
Wow.
so like he stepped. Then he came back and he's like made up this like whole lie. He's like, yeah, I went to a therapy to get help, and the therapist is great. Like, part of what I need to do.
She said I'm fixed.
No, yeah. He's like,
Yeah.
part of my therapy is that I need to sleep in the same bed as your daughter. And they're like, well, a doctor said it. Okay, go on ahead.
This is after
Damn.
this is
Post-kidnapping.
after everything.
Post-kidnapping.
Post-kidnapping.
Wow.
Yes.
Part of my therapy. By the way, what doctor is that?
I know, right?
You know, like
Yeah.
that's a great doc. You know,
His
like,
name is Dr. Medical.
what doc?
And he's real.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, so
part of his therapy is sleeping next to your daughter.
he's cured of being a pedophile. Part
Yeah.
of the therapy is he has to molest kids.
Yeah, yeah. That's part of what he needs to do.
Yeah.
It is like a tragic doc, and it gets much worse, and it's pretty bad. They do like he wants the girl to come live in Wyoming with him when she's like 16 or something, and
Right.
like the parents are like, hell no. and then she like begs enough, and they're like, oh, okay. The guy calls him, and he's like, look, she's gonna probably run away here anyway. They're like,
Oh,
I guess
no.
you're right.
Yeah.
And they
Well,
like send her there
gee.
for the summer.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's one of those family holidays, though, when they all get together. They're like, well, we know each other. You know what I mean? It's like we're,
Yeah.
we're acquainted. You know?
I mean,
a lot-
family friend.
Yeah.
it's worth. I really still didn't spoil the doc.
yeah. Who
'cause there's
made
a
the
lot
doc?
more.
Was it from a point
No,
of-
well,
yeah.
because it ends where like the family's doing good weirdly, and the daughter became like, a successful writer. She like writes about it and speaks about it, and like I still don't think that the whole family realizes the length of how absurd it is. You know,
So they're all still
Yeah.
cool.
they did all get
Nobody's in
manipulated
jail.
by the dude. Yeah,
She's a great writer.
Yeah.
What's the downside, Jack?
yeah. I mean,
You know what I
hey.
mean? I mean, she's a great writer. This guy's not in jail. Everyone's happy. I'm confused, you know?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
and
you could watch that doc if you want. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like I didn't spoil it. It's still there's still some meat on the bone for
Yeah.
sure. I left out a giant part that's pretty crazy.
It'll
but,
be a part of my favorite genre of documentary where people who've had horrible childhoods are more successful than I am. So
God.
that's a big genre of my Netflix.
That's like a
Or-
recommended tab.
Oh yeah, it's like
on
these
your-
people
on
have
your
been
homepage.
horribly tortured and have turned out better.
yeah.
You know?
Well, there's another thing too with like true crime, which I'm a crime I'm a
Yeah.
crime drama head.
Yeah.
I'm an SVU head. I'm literally have watched like every single good police procedural show, detective
Yeah.
show. I love it. And I love true crime stuff too, but there's a new like the podcast world has cracked into like this new like true crime section with like that show My Favorite Murder
Oh, yeah,
and all that
huge.
stuff where it's like
White women love a murder.
that's true. But then like
Love,
okay, so they made a TV show version of Dirty John.
Right.
Which Dirty John, if you're not familiar, is an amazing podcast, by the way. But it's about a mom who is manipulated by this insane con man who nearly murdered them. And I'm not going to spoil the podcast, but like, luckily her daughters, who were pretty much adults, or like in their early 20s, I think,
Yeah.
were like super looking out for her and stuck their neck out for her and like literally saved her from this dude. You know,
Yeah.
like they're the heroes in this.
Yeah.
Because their mom was totally just getting conned by this guy, and her kid saved her. But Bravo, it was like Bravo or one of those networks made it into a TV show, and like Real Housewives it up. And like in the trailer, I watched like part of an episode, but like these girls are heroes,
Right.
and they're also violent crime survivors,
Right.
and victims.
Yeah.
And like the Bravo version, like they're taking creative liberties that just don't seem right.
Yeah.
Where it's
Yeah.
like their characters in the show are like push up bra, fake boobs, and just like, Mom, you're such a cunt. You should have bought me an iPhone, you
And
stupid bitch.
And where did this
Like-
where did this happen?
This happened in Orange County in real life.
Yeah, okay.
But it's like this is like these
Right.
people aren't
Yeah.
old. Like the girls are probably 30s now, like
Yeah.
31
Yeah.
maybe. This is like
The show
recent.
starts, you're like, Newport
And-
Beach is my city. It's
Yeah,
like,
they're
whoa.
like they're like taking creative liberties to like make these into
They want to make him into like Emma Watson and Bling Ring.
Yeah.
You know?
yeah, and like it's
Yeah.
just fucked because like these are these aren't people who are on a podcast. They're victims of crime.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
and there's also the weird world of like these true crime heads because these podcasts have like crazy followings or whatever.
Yeah.
But their brains warp a little bit where they like an
Yeah.
episode a lot, but then it translates into them like you see people where it's like, oh, I stan Dylan Roof, like, oh, I'm gonna marry Dylan Klebold, like it's just like a weird like
oh wow, so something
like
happens where they
crime fandom or
they
like
start- whoa.
or like
Dylan
it's
Roof's
just
not
I know
even
it's just
hot.
like, no, I
No,
mean I'm
he's
just
a
like
no-go.
He's like malnourished.
I just
Well,
think it's like the way people talk about like crime stories is a little jarring.
The
'cause-
way that, those girls that like believed in Slender Man
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
killed some girl at their school. There's like some documentary about it, and like people send them fan art all the time.
yeah.
There's something weird to me about a whole, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's just weird where an entire, because they do, My Favorite Murder Live, you have an entire theater of people getting together to have a good time based on a vicious murder.
Dude,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's
like,
like-
it's an
that's-
interesting.
Yeah. Like that's
Right.
my thing with My Favorite Murder or whatever is like dude, imagine your mom was killed by a serial killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're like seeing clips pop up on your Twitter where it's like these two women on stage and they're like riffing on like
Yeah.
the guy who killed your mom.
Yeah.
Be like, well, he's kind of
Yeah.
sexy though, if you think
Yeah.
about it. Like, just
And
like
then they like
yeah.
promote their dates.
Yeah, that
They're
guy
like, I'll be the
stabbed my
Irvine
mom
Improv.
49
you
Yeah,
know?
it's like-
come on down.
it's a
Don't
little
get
weird.
murdered.
I don't know the their catchphrase is like, don't get murdered.
Yeah, don't get murdered.
Is
come
that
on
the,
down.
the catchphrase of
like
the pod?
try not to get murdered.
Try not to get murdered on your
Damn.
way to buying 2 drinks to hear
Yeah.
me. Please.
It's like one thing. Yeah, it's one thing if it's like a major news story where
Yeah.
like Charles Manson is like so big that it's just at this point just a pop culture item.
Sure.
But it's different when it's like a local like a simple local murder where it's like just regular people who aren't. The press is over. Like they're no longer in articles about it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like podcast fans are like trying to add them on Facebook or
we
something.
did this thing
and like
a few weeks ago called the Smiley Face Killers, which is there's these weird
yeah.
cases of like athletic, good-looking, popular college-age white kids, and they
Yes.
all disappear from bars and they all end up in rivers. So, and it is kind of weird. And I was at the Green Room of Comedy on State in Madison, and I was trying to retire from conspiracy theories, but the host of the show was like, "Hey, you got to talk to my friend." And this kid, I got on the phone with him. He's like, "Listen, the reality is, I went out to this bar. I had 2 drinks. This girl I'd never met. She was there. She had 5 of her friends there." He goes, "I black out. I don't remember what happens." And he goes, "I wake up and I'm on a dam in the middle of the Wisconsin River." Which
Oh
is
my
like,
God.
So it's crazy. So he calls in and goes through the whole thing, and it's like a crazy episode. But Oxygen does a show on this, and it's ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
it's absurd. Like, the
my
Oxygen
God.
show is like these detectives from New York City who like came up with the theory, but they're like, there's a part of the show where they go eat at this diner, and the guy's like, "Yeah, it's a real greasy spoon. That's why they get the food good." It's like, "Hey, you get the fried eggs with bacon," and it's like, what the fuck about the murder here? Like, everything doesn't have to be parts unknown.
Yeah.
That was what I thought was weird about Bourdain's
Yeah.
show. Like, he would go to Turkey, and there's like, and the family would be like, we haven't really seen our daughter. It's like, it's been a few days. She's in the city. We're in the country. It's kind of political instability. And Bourdain would then start talking about hummus. And I'm like, what the fuck is like, that's the weirdness about taking anything and putting it in that reality TV format.
Yeah.
Of like, well, we just got to catch people's interest every minute. Ooh,
Yeah.
they're going to a nice diner. Ooh, it's an
Yeah.
old, not too many
Yeah.
diners like that left. And it's like, aren't people getting thrown in a river?
Yeah.
Isn't that the
Yeah.
concern?
yeah, that's crazy.
But people
and the
that
smiley
makes-
face
yeah.
murders aren't even solved, right?
I mean, they're not solved, whether it is
And
a
the
thing
smiley
or it
face,
isn't. Who
basically,
knows?
if
Yeah.
I'm correct,
Yeah.
the smiley face thing is that they found
They find
smiley face
graffiti
graffiti
near it.
near
Yeah, they
which
find, yeah.
is questionable because
Oh,
that's
yeah.
like the most common thing somebody would draw.
To me, it's
Yeah.
not even that. The smiley face graffiti does not do it for me. What's interesting to me is that all these people end up in a river in the middle of January. I grew up in a town in Long Island that was on sea level, and we were no one fell in the water, and it was not for lack of drinking or drug use. I'm not saying that all of these are suspicious, but a lot of them are weird. Where it's like,
No, I've done my
they
research
are
on
weird.
this. It's
They
pretty
get
crazy.
separated
Yeah.
from their friends. They end up in a river a few miles away. So I mean, I'm always careful when I go into that world because I always try to think logically and not just try to jump onto whatever. But it is weird. But of course, the Oxygen show does nothing but.
Yeah.
It's just sad to watch these parents reliving their kids' deaths with no, like, there's no arrests.
Yeah.
Like, there's no, so But
Well, so
if you like true crime,
let me open up another can of worms
Yeah.
too. Honestly, we could go off.
I have
Yeah.
given up dairy and my skin is better. Oh no, I'm sorry. Go on.
Oh yeah, I mean this
No.
topic right
Yeah,
here. Like we
all right.
could, Brandon could like walk out of the room and come back and find us 3 hours later.
Yeah.
Let
But,
y'all cook.
Yeah, I mean, something I've been fascinated with was that there was a giant spike in serial killings in the 60s and 70s, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually it just stopped, and now we're seeing another spike with like mass shootings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't really hear about serial killers anymore.
Yeah.
And that's not like a genius point I'm making, but it's
Okay.
something worth thinking of. I always
To
think about it a
defend
bit.
it.
I think about it a
Yeah.
bit, you know?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of factors because the serial killer craze just kind of ended. And quite frankly, like
Yeah.
a lot of it is that we've gotten some new investigative techniques to profiling
Sure,
them.
it's much harder now.
Blah, blah, blah. Also, a lot of these people are copycats and like,
The 2 books that are really interesting on the subject you're talking about are both written by the same guy, and this guy has said a lot of questionable things I don't agree with.
Sure.
But, like, I mean, not like kill the Jews, but he has said certain things. Like, I don't believe that 9/11's an inside job. I think there's layers of complexity to it, but like, like he said some things I wouldn't go as far as to endorse, but there's a book called Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon about Laurel Canyon and about a lot of the culture that was surrounding Laurel Canyon, which, as you remember, was kind of the precursor to the Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And you had a lot of bands like the Byrds and the Doors and Frank Zappa and all those guys came out of Laurel Canyon. And that's where the Manson murders took place.
Well, Manson was hanging at like Dennis Wilson's house,
Oh,
maybe?
yeah. So
or?
there was a lot of this weird like overlap of like extreme drug use, cult activity, people that are kind of
I might order that book right now. Yeah.
With Satanism. And then there was also the Rand Corporation and this big like U.S., a lot of intelligence stuff going on too. So McGowan's point is that it was good that the CIA was able to test drugs on all these hippies because it discredited a legitimate anti-war movement. And again, this is real conspiracy stuff, but it's fun. And so he said that a lot of the counterculture in the 60s was like, being fed, indirectly by people that had, they basically an agenda, and it benefited them to have the anti-war movement be, these people in fields on drugs naked instead of like rational people. Like, why the fuck are we, and then his other book is called Program to Kill. Program to Kill's weird, where he thinks that a lot of serial killers were actually members of nefarious groups, cults, whatever, and then one person kind of takes the fall for an activity that many people were involved in, and he uses David Berkowitz's Son of Sam as an indication that he was part of like a cult of people that did really heinous things, horrible things, and that David Berkowitz took the fall for it. I haven't come to any conclusions on any of that, but it's very interesting. Like, if you read about a lot of conspiracy, because a lot of these guys, a lot of these serial killers, some of them have been in the military, some of them were discharged from the military. It's not impossible to think that some of them could have been in some type of program that whether it was mind control or something like that, it didn't necessarily turn out the right way. We know we have these programs. MK Ultra was a real thing. I mean, so I haven't come to any conclusion on that, but it's very interesting when you look at, why there aren't as many, why there were so many serial killers in that specific period of time.
What's funny is I was kind of setting that up to talk about something funny again, but now we're in that. So his theories
ruined that.
His theories sound pretty kooky. That might be interesting to read.
Here's the thing.
I don't know if I fall into that.
It's kooky, but what it opens up is this idea of the media and the information that you get, for the most part, from mainstream press sources is not necessarily the way to always think about these events. So if you dig deeper, some of these events are weird, and a lot of times it's just people minimizing, embarrassing connections that some of these people have had. But like, some of them especially the Manson, some of those, it's a very like the overlap between violent cults and people that were musicians in that period of time in that area of California is pretty wild.
Yeah.
That is pretty wild.
I personally wouldn't make that correlation. I think it was, so I was setting this up to say that, like, then when I was going back and watching the Ted Bundy doc that just came out, fucking hilarious, because you're hearing about the techniques that they're using to try to catch him. Bundy had already killed like 9 people in the same town or whatever, and they're talking to the cops, and they're like, well, we figured our best plan of action was to just kind of walk around and hopefully we'd see somebody committing a murder.
See what happens. Hopefully we'll catch it.
No, and then they like he got caught in Florida after escaping from jail, and they're like holding him. They're like, who is this mystery man?
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Colorado FBI is looking for him. They just didn't have the technology, and you're just like, I mean, like, literally the dumbest guy could commit a murder back then and not get caught.
No, absolutely.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is like, I don't know, a lot of people have conspiracy theories about all that kind of stuff.
It's fun. It's fun. I don't have any conclusion on any of it because I don't know enough about it, and I haven't devoted enough time to it. But some of the theories are like, are weird and interesting, of like, oh yeah, did this person act alone? Did they always act alone? Were they always able to do this?
Yeah.
Was someone helping them? And for whatever reason, did that person not get caught? So it's like, that's always, to me, interesting.
Yeah, the technology wasn't there. People were off their phones, and they Back in the day, they loved serial killing. Nowadays, people, they're on their phones.
Yeah,
they
love
have a short
Instagram.
attention span. They just want everything to go viral, so they do mass shootings.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
It's these millennials.
I mean,
You
serial
know?
killers were dedicated, focused,
Yeah.
hardworking people. Try to find one of them.
Yeah,
now.
millennials
Yeah.
are
You know?
killing the serial killing industry.
They really
Yeah,
have.
millennials are killing the serial killers.
yeah,
They
they're
have
just
not-
it's just fucking short
They're
attention
mass shooting
span,
the
mass
serial-
shootings.
Yeah. Damn.
pretty crazy.
God
Yeah.
damn
God
it.
So,
damn.
well, I never even talked. My grandpa passed away this year. Rest in peace. But he
Yeah.
was
Was
an
a serial
FBI
killer?
agent.
Oh.
No, he's an FBI agent.
Never got
He's like-
caught.
Never got caught. There was always
Yeah, right?
teeth around, you know?
No, but and he was also Cook County State's attorney, and he was Cook County State's attorney while John Wayne Gacy was being investigated and
Wow.
prosecuted.
Oh
So
yeah,
he-
you found some like why you found like
I mean, yeah. So I grew up with like crazy
Yeah.
Gacy. He was there when they excavated the bodies.
Yeah.
So
God.
like he has this.
I'm a John Wayne truther.
Yeah.
And I think that he was just, misunderstood clown.
That's the-
God,
well,
you
when
know?
it comes down to it,
Well-
he was a great clown.
Well, it is crazy
very
because he
good.
like was super charming and like
Yeah.
one of the things my grandpa used to tell me about was like the prosecution process because we could even talk about it in length maybe on a Patreon or something one time because he has crazy stories, but like
Yeah.
my grandpa got elected state's attorney by like the Black Panthers had his support randomly. Like he was like a weird
Yeah.
situation. There was like a lot of corruption in Chicago and he got
Interesting.
but so he was kind of like had a name for himself and politically, and John Wayne Gacy was a member of his local Democratic Party, like very local,
Wild.
right?
Yeah.
Very local.
Of course,
And my
he was
grandpa was
Democrat.
like a Chicago Republican
Yeah.
state's attorney.
Right.
But when he would like the first couple days in court, he like literally wouldn't shut up and wouldn't stop talking to my grandpa about politics, like trying to like be like Bernie, like trying
Yeah.
to call him like in court. Be like,
Yeah.
what do you think of this election coming up? Like, who do you got? Like, not even in a creepy way.
Yeah.
Just like literally, like having to.
Yeah.
My grandpa would have to stop the prosecution and be like, Mr. Gacy, I'm prosecuting you for murder right now. I
Right.
cannot talk to you about a local
Oh,
election.
this was during
Wow.
the murder prosecution.
Yeah, so he
Wow.
like wound up putting out one of the assistant attorneys
Gacy
on
being
there.
like,
Love.
yeah,
What do you
damn,
think
this
of this
election
election?
cycle sure is crazy,
Yeah.
It's like,
huh?
this is wild. Are
No,
you
but it
seeing
is-
what's the smears,
Yeah.
the ugliness?
But it is crazy because like he had. So I did a tweet. I posted when my grandpa died. I posted like this picture. He has a pristine Gacy business card that he picked up when they were raiding his house because Gacy. They didn't know the scope of Gacy when they caught him. Like he
Yeah.
finally got on like one charge, and so when they initially are going into his house, they think he's like some guy that did one crime, and so like they're just walking around, and he sees the pile of business cards, and he's like, John Gacy, president, like local like Democratic Party. He's like,
Right.
oh, I'm gonna pick this up. This is gonna be funny to like taunt my Democrat friends or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And
so funny.
of course, then they start finding shit in the house and start excavating like
Yeah.
one after the other
Yeah.
for over the course of like a week,
Mhm.
and then it just evolves. But it's
How
pretty
many
fucking
bodies did
insane.
they take out?
How many was it? 20? Like
It's a
I
lot.
couldn't.
It's too
I'm not good.
many.
I don't have a good memory.
Yeah, it's too
But
many. It's
It
gratuitous.
is crazy, and like a lot of those stories were like weird details that were like almost funny. It's very surreal.
I mean, it's sad. It is. That's why those murder podcasts really work because a lot, like when you talk about this stuff, it's so dark that it lends itself to being funny. You got to be funny about it, and some of the details are absurd and funny.
yeah.
So like you're kind of like
The
you know.
funniest, a funny detail I'll cap that off on is that so that business card picture went kind of viral, which
Oh,
I
yeah?
didn't want. Like I posted it. My grandpa had literally just died. It was like the day of the funeral. I was kind of
Right.
posting it foolishly, I guess, for the people I know, just like, hey, my grandpa died. Like, this is kind of crazy fact.
right.
But it went viral and it got into like definitely like the My Favorite Murder crowd where
Yeah.
people are leaving comments where it's like, dude, like you're talking about a dead person here. Like you got to chill. Like
Yeah.
this is not
Yeah.
like My Favorite Murder podcast. Like
Right.
a guy,
What are they saying?
I
Like,
can't even remember it. It was just like a little like out of pocket. You know what I'm saying? Where
Sure.
it's like, and then the funniest out of pocket thing where this was just like literally funny was like I get a DM and a bunch of tweets from an account called like Chicago History Museum or something like that.
Yeah, that
And
sounds
they're
like
like
a-
they
sounds
like
like a
message me
troll.
and they're like they want to ask about the card or whatever. And I'm like, awesome. Like I'm super stoked. And I like message them because like my grandpa was like involved in a bunch of really cool things in history that he like didn't talk about when he was
Yeah.
alive just because like he was very professional.
Yeah.
But he have loved to preserve the history. So I was like super down to help this like museum, like whatever it is. And I messaged them like, what could I do? Blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, they're like, hey, so my husband really likes John Wayne Gacy, and it's his birthday coming up, and I want to buy the business card. How is $40?
Oh, wow.
Oh God!
You motherfucker!
What a
like,
nightmare!
I thought they were
Oh
like,
my God.
and then I realized it's not even like a real museum. Like I don't even know.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you
You're
want
like,
to buy my girl? Like,
it's
the
like a
only
room
I'm
in
like,
their
I'm like,
house.
this is the only thing
Yeah.
I inherited from him.
You're like,
Right.
but I will
And then
give you
they're-
a shout out on Cameo.
No,
if
yeah,
you
no.
want.
Then they're like,
as
okay,
John
how
Wayne
about
Gacy as a clown.
They're like, how about 60?
Oh my God.
Nightmare. God.
And it kept going. They were like
And
getting
that's
so
why we
mad.
need more serial
It was
killers.
just like-
get rid of these fucks.
Yeah, it was just so
God.
fucking insane.
Yeah.
And it was just like the excuse was like, oh, my husband likes.
He
likes the
Gacy.
murderer.
He likes John Wayne
Go
Gacy.
fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
the type of people I'm
have
talking
very-
about.
I think it's just it's like you have a
Yeah.
very boring life, and it's the ideas like, oh, I'm just gonna, I'm obsessed with this killer.
It's
Yeah.
the funniest thing ever to see like a tweet about like, hey, this is something very, very important to me. I want to share it with you guys because it's
Yeah.
one of a kind and it means a lot to me. And so message them, be like, yo, how about I buy you that for two $20 bills?
Yeah, $40.
Can you imagine if I was like, done, bitch, let's
Yeah.
go.
Let's go.
Send me
Damn.
that.
Cash
Absolutely.
Yeah, just $19 more and I could buy the new Call of Duty game at GameStop.
Yeah. Sorry,
Fuck
John
yeah,
Wayne Gacy
bitch.
didn't sign it.
Yeah, ooh.
Sorry, he didn't have his signature.
Yeah.
It's crazy.